Welcome, everyone, to the Chicago Football Connection podcast. I'm your host, Steve Letizia. Follow me on Twitter at CFC Bears, joined by my co-host, Luke O'Grady. Follow him on Twitter at Luke O'Grady. Bears have started OTAs, so we're getting back into actual football. It's still going to be a couple months before we have a lot to talk about, but we decided that we wanted to still do a weekly podcast, and we wanted to rank our top 5 most important Bears for 2023. So just for this upcoming season, not kind of long-term future. So we both ranked our top 5s. We have not talked about who's in our top 5 at all.
Nope.
I also probably should mention the big caveat is that we're doing the top 5s not named Justin Fields, because if we were ranking our top 5 most important Bears for 2023, the obvious answer is Justin Fields at 1, and that's boring. We talk about Justin Fields all the time. We want to talk about kind of some other guys too. We left Justin Fields off this list. This is not going to be a Justin Fields podcast. This is going to be about the rest of the Bears roster. So we ranked our top 5s. We have not discussed with each other what we have. We're actually going to start at 1 and work our way down, because we think there'll be more discussion kind of as you get further down, and also then you can't guess who's at number 1. So Luke, I'm going to pass it over to you. Do you want to start? Who's your most important Bear for 2023, not named Justin Fields?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Or do you want me to start? I can start.
This one was close.
Mm-hmm.
This one was close, and I think a lot of these players will end up being like, the stronger one person is, the better you can look at like the unit as a whole.
Yeah,
I think that'll be the theme with a lot of this, because it does, like, you are always going to rely on like your best performing people of your unit's offense and defense. So if, like, I guess the expectation is if any of these players you're able to lean on and say, hey, like, this guy is like a cornerstone piece of this unit, then it would be a real success. And it could be a disaster if they kind of regress to anything other than like a serviceable starter. Right. So with that in mind, and because of the way of the world, we need to make sure that we can see what we have in Justin Fields and basically with the offense as a whole too, with Getsy. And because of that, if we're not naming Justin Fields, I think the next most important cog on that offense this year is,
I feel like I know who you're going to say.
Braxton Jones.
I was going to say that is, spoiler alert, also my number 1. So I thought this one was, for everything you just said, like, this one was the easy one for me for not doing Justin Fields. For everything you just said, if Braxton Jones doesn't take that next step, the offense kind of falls apart, because, like you said, we don't know what, Justin Fields, is not going to be protected, and we're going into next offseason. We're still kind of wondering, is Justin Fields the guy? We don't know, because his offensive line sucked. Like, it's hard to judge him.
That's starting a rookie on the right side. So we need to make sure that there's not like 2 revolving doors basically at our tackle positions. And on the flip side, if he is good, if he does take, even a little bit of a marginal improvement over what he was last year, he'll be a top 15 tackle in the league just on his run blocking alone. And if you park him beside Tevin Jenkins, who now looks like he's going to be on the left side of the line, if he's playing left guard beside Braxton Jones, and Braxton Jones does take that little step forward, that's going to be a really formidable side of the line that the Bears can kind of play toward and allow their backs or their tight ends to block on the other side and be able to scheme up some really good pockets for Fields.
Yeah, it's fun having 3 young offensive linemen with potential on your roster. I feel like it's been so long. Like, maybe the Bears would have one guy who we draft in the second round or something. And like, oh, I hope he does well. But now we really have, 3 guys: Tevin Jenkins, Braxton Jones, and Darnell Wright, who are like that. Those guys have legit potential.
They all right in there.
Yeah, and they all turn out to be good. Then you're looking at a really solid, core of your offensive line, and you kind of fill in the rest as you go. But yeah, with Braxton Jones, everything you said, he doesn't have to become Trent Williams. He doesn't have to be at the top left tackle of football. He just has to improve his pass blocking just to get it to average. And with his run blocking, he's proven that he's a good run blocker in the NFL. Yeah. So there's no reason to think that he won't be a good run blocker next year too. And I also think this might be, I don't know if there's any basis for this, but it's just kind of like my feeling. I feel like him being a really good run blocker gives me more hope that he will eventually get to the point where he can be a good pass blocker. It's like, you can do this one thing really well. We know you have strength. If you just kind of fix your technique here and there, your pass blocking will come along too. So I think yeah, like I said, I think that was a no-brainer. At number 2, it starts to get a little bit more interesting, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I would say with Braxton Jones, like I think he's gonna get to that. I really do. I think he's gonna take a step forward. I was saying to you guys, we have a little group chat with a couple of other boys we chat with on Twitter. And we were talking about how, as far as devil's advocate reasons why you could expect to see that jump. One, people usually talk about tackles having the hardest first year. Tackles or corners having like the hardest first year translation to the NFL. So him being as good as he was in year 1 was impressive. And 2, down the stretch, he played a lot better than he did in like the first 8 games of the season. So his first half of the season as a pass blocker looked so much worse than the second half did. And if you look at the whole body of work, you could summarize it and say, he really wasn't that good. But he was closer to average or middle of the pack, or maybe even like slightly verging on like not so bad at all over the last 7 or 8 weeks of the season. So the arrow's pointing up in the direction. I really do think that he's going to turn some heads this year. At least I hope so.
Yeah, I think so too. You can really make the argument. Like I thought about when I was putting this list together, I thought about putting Darnell Wright on here, up this high. I thought about putting Tevin Jenkins, up that high because there's guys like that like you need those guys to step up. But I think when you're talking about just the offensive line, I tried to do it kind of by position. And when you talk about the offensive line, Jones taking that next step would be so huge for where the Bears at. Not only for Justin Fields' development and everything, but it turns you into you have your left tackle locked up for many years, and you used a 5th round pick to do it. Like that's so valuable. He's gonna be on a cheap rookie deal. Like it's so valuable moving forward for your team building if he just takes that small next step. And if he doesn't, then you're looking at you have to use a 1st round pick next year on a left tackle then.
Yep.
So a lot going on there with that Braxton Jones selection.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to go with Tevin because there's almost like this expectation. It's like there isn't a whole lot to not like about his game. If he stayed the same player he was last year, that'd be fine. I mean, we are probably expecting him to be the best offensive lineman we have, but I was just saying that it seems like Jones is more important because he's kind of in that place where it's like if he takes a step forward, then you really have a gem with him. And if he kind of steps back, then you have to think, is this good enough or is he just kind of a stopgap? So there's a lot of question marks around him. And, if that arrow points up, the offense looks so much better than if that arrow points down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the offensive line. Yeah, do you want me to go for number 2?
Yeah, what do you got? To be honest with you, I think we'll probably have the same first 2.
I don't think you'll have this as number 2. I kind of went out of limb here.
I meant
you want to guess. You want to guess who mine is?
I do.
Okay. What do you think I have at number 2?
Luke Getsy.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't go into the coaching staff at all.
I didn't either, but when you said you went on a limb, and I was like, did he do something funny?
No. That would have been a good. Honestly, that we probably should have done that. But
I thought about asking.
I went just
players because we do know that Getsy is going to be crucial to this.
Yeah, no. My number 2, maybe it's not out of left field. Maybe it's exactly your number 2 is. But my number 2 is Jalen Johnson. Same. Okay, so we're on the same page there. I think it makes sense. Like the cornerback position, besides Jalen Johnson, like Kyler Gordon's had a rough first year as untested. Tyreek Stevenson is a rookie. Like if Jalen Johnson really needs to kind of be that alpha cornerback, that guy who might have to shadow Justin Jefferson or other top tier wide receivers. And I think he's played well in his 3 years, 4 years, however long, 3 years. I think he's played well. I think he's played above average. I really want to see him take that next step and be that kind of lockdown guy.
It's almost like the Darnell Wright. I mean, it's almost like the Braxton Jones effect on defense. It's like you got a young, promising guy that's probably going to be starting opposite him. You got a young guy that shows promise that may be good in that unit, but neither of those guys you're really is really hinging on. But we have this other guy in Jalen Johnson and in Braxton Jones who's really showed promise. You really need them to take the next step for them to be the guy. I would agree that I think Jalen Johnson has gotten better every year, but he is probably never been like the player that he can show in like games. Yeah. Like that, there was that game against the Packers a couple of years ago where he had 7 or 8 reps on Devontae Adams and maybe allowed 1 catch for 10 yards. And he was following him around and it was like, okay, this is the player that we need out of him. But we needed a little bit more consistency. and we'll sound like a broken record today with this, but if he's good, that unit is good. If he's bad, that unit is going to be looking for a leader. I mean, they have it in Eddie Jackson, obviously, but the cornerback room, as opposed to just the DB room, would be slim pickings.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you nailed it right on the head. Where we've seen him do it for games, we've not seen him do it for, or we've seen him do it for a game. We've not seen him do it for games, like stringing together 4 or 5 great games. So I really want to see that. And like you said, if he is just an average corner, maybe even slightly above average, then that room could be a little rough, depending on what Kyle Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson do. If he takes that next step and is a lockdown corner, then you can kind of live with if Kyle Gordon is just a okay corner and is not going to be a true number 2. Maybe he's just a nickel guy. You can live with that if you have a really good cornerback on the outside, and if Tyreek Stevenson comes in and he's the player we think he could be. So to me, I mean, this was tough. I mean, I don't think it was a no-brainer to have Jalen Johnson at 2, but I definitely was. He was definitely right when I did this had exercise. It's like he's definitely in my top 5. I'll figure out where I put him later, and he ended up at 2. But yeah, it's that domino effect is why it's so important. And also, these cornerbacks are going to have a tough job because I'm sure we'll get into this later. But like the pass rush isn't going to be good.
No,
like there's just nowhere around it. Even if we make a trade for a guy, it's probably going to be a situational pass rusher or something. Or even if we sign a guy off the streets, that's not going to change your pass rush overnight. They have their work cut out for them. So it's a tough, tall task that they're asking Jalen Johnson to do, but he kind of needs to do it for the Bears' sake.
Yeah, it didn't look like Poles was like really prepared to spend too much money to try and solve every issue in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, Eberflus got asked about how all the free agent contracts they gave out were basically all to like young, like 26 or under athletes, and he kind of said, "Yeah, like that's kind of how we look at free agency: is guys going into their second contract that maybe are starting short term and trying to get themselves paid. They're enthusiastic about playing as good as they can get." And I love that process over the long term. But it does mean that there's going to be some positions year over year that maybe are going to be weaker than others because they're a little bit stringy on how they spend it. Because of that, I don't even have a pass rusher on my top 5 most important list. I've kind of just accepted that group's going to be bad.
That's fair. I mean, there were definitely some people in consideration, but I agree with you. You just kind of have to accept that the pass rush isn't going to be great. You got to just kind of hope they find a way to be average. Is kind of like the best way you kind of do it. Another thing with Jalen Johnson is, keep in mind it's a contract year, so he has all the incentive in the world to play really well. Now it remains to be seen if he's even going to play without a contract. But I still they'll probably end up working something out, or the Bears do have the franchise tag as leverage, so I do think he eventually plays even without a contract. But he might hope there might be that also might influence the Bears' decision. If he threatens to hold out, like, wow, this is the second most important player for us this year. We really need him. Maybe we kind of bite the bullet.
This video.
Yeah, maybe we bite the bullet and give him the contract that he wants.
Yeah, it seems like the Bears have always been like pretty vocal about wanting to keep Jalen Johnson, but when Eberflus was asked about it this week, like he kind of was given a couple chances to just take the out and say, yeah, like we'll expect him to be around, and he never did. He basically just hit him with the political, we'll deal with the guys that are here right now. And if Eberflus knew nothing, he probably would have said, we'll expect to see him at training camp. And if he knew that he'd see him for sure at training camp, he'd say we'd see him for sure at training camp. So him saying nothing is like, maybe we won't be seeing him.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. It'll be definitely something that we'll be monitoring this offseason and probably talking about a lot until we get actual Bears games, because we'll have to fill the time with something. So,
but to be fair, I mean, you have to look at Jalen Johnson's decision and think he's having similar conversations like this. He's probably thinking, hey, the Bears know how bad this room is if they don't have someone like me in that room with them. It's probably why the Bears took a couple of shots in the cornerback position in the draft.
Right.
You draft for the needs you're going to need in a year, and maybe this situation is kind of exactly why. So it'll be interesting to monitor. But if he does play, man, if he can take a step forward and get to kind of that elite level he's flashed, that defense could look a lot better than they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 3.
Absolutely. Number 3.
Wanna go?
You want to go this? We'll switch off. You go.
Okay,
You go
yeah,
now.
that's right. Back to the offensive side.
Okay.
There was a couple of ways I could have gone about this, and honestly, making this decision was kind of like almost like making a prediction for how I think things might play out in the future as well. But I'm picking Darnell Mooney,
Okay.
the money man.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I just think of that receiver room, you have Mr. consistent. You know what you're getting. Probably has the opportunity to be better than he's performed so far in the NFL in Darnell Mooney. And then you have, Claypool, who flashed really, really high highs, never had 1,000 yards, but had 10 touchdown seasons and had like 3 or 4 touchdown games a couple of times. Really looked like a weapon in Pittsburgh and then completely fell off the map. And of those two, it really feels like someone needs to step up and be a clear wide receiver 2 to DJ Moore, who is going to be wide receiver 1. And I'm kind of in the sunk cost place with Chase Claypool right now. If he's never good for us, it's like, okay, fine, whatever. With Darnell Mooney, I've kind of like for a couple of years now, like really banged the table for him. I remember when people were calling him, they had to be a wide receiver 2. I thought he could be a wide receiver 1 for us. And maybe time will tell that was wrong, but I'm definitely hoping that he steps up and is that wide receiver 2 for us, because I think he really is a killer playmaker. And I think that it's like, I would just like it to be Darnell Mooney more than Chase Claypool. And if someone's going to step up this season and really give us a dynamic 1-2 punch, I think it's going to be important for the team, and I think it's going to be Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, I mean, Darnell Mooney was a good choice. And I agree with everything you said about, one of Darnell Mooney or Chase Claypool has to step up, because it's not DJ Moore's not enough. You need that second option. Yeah. Best case scenario, they both play extremely well, but you need at least one of them. And so Darnell Mooney would probably be my choice of those 2 guys as well. I think if there is going to be a guy who steps up, it's probably him. And kind of show the flashes that be more consistent, but show the flashes that he showed a lot in year 1.
Yeah, year 1, year 2. Remember, don't sleep. He had 1,000 yards, right? That's not an easy thing to do. He did that playing with, Andy Dalton and Nick Foles and Justin Fields. So, don't forget about Darnell Mooney. I think if he has a good year, that offense could really be scary.
Yeah, I agree. So it's interesting that you had Darnell Mooney. I did not have Darnell Mooney as number 3.
Okay, but
it's interesting because I have a different wide receiver at number 3.
Yeah.
And it's not Chase Claypool. I vote with DJ Moore. And I think you can make an argument for both the guys being most important, because you need a guy to step out and be a number 2. But I went with DJ. The reason I went with DJ Moore as my number 3 most important Bear is because as soon as that trade went down, everyone's mind went to AJ Brown to the Eagles or Stephon Diggs to the Bills, and how they elevated those young quarterbacks to the next level, and how they changed those offenses and how they made those teams really good. So, and I think we need DJ Moore to do that exact same thing for Justin Fields. He has to be that alpha number 1 wide receiver who can take, be an actual threat to a deep. Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool can be threats to the defense, but DJ Moore needs to be a guy defenses need to actually game plan against, and say we need to have a safety over the top every time on that side of the field, stuff like that. So I think just kind of the expectations are going to be high for him, and what he potentially can turn this offense, and most importantly, Justin Fields into. That's the reason I put him at 3. But I think you can go in both directions with the wide receiver group, and make a very valid case for either one of those players being the most important wide receiver on the Bears.
Yeah, the most important wide receiver is for sure DJ Moore. I guess Darnell Mooney made my list because I was kind of just saying DJ Moore is going to be who I think he's going to be. He seems like he's quarterback proof, and okay, we're getting a wide receiver 1. But to be fair, when I heard you explaining it, I was having flashbacks of like trading for Brandon Marshall and signing Allen Robinson, and it's like, what's his name, Bernard Berrian or Muhsin Muhammad making the comment that this is where receivers come to die. It's like, there is a chance that DJ Moore is just another receiver that comes to Chicago and it just doesn't go as good. It's like,
But I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, he has been pretty quarterback proof his entire career. 100%. He's not played with good quarterbacks in Carolina and produced 1,000-yard seasons. So Justin Fields will be the best quarterback he played with.
Exactly.
Besides, Cam Newton is like DJ Moore's like rookie year. I think Cam Newton was still good, but like still.
Yeah, I mean Jalen Johnson's. I mean DJ Moore's a great choice. He's got to be. He has to be the best receiver, the Bears receiver, unless Chase Claypool or Darnell Mooney is able to like emerge as a clear number one. If either of them are better than DJ Moore this year, it's a complete failure. It's not a failure because we have a pretty good price.
Unless one of those players turns out to be amazing and it's not DJ Moore's fault that he's number 2. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
I really want DJ Moore to be that number 1 receiver guy. That connection of him and Justin Fields 1 and 2 could be so fun for so long. So I like it. Yep, DJ Moore at 3. Okay.
All right, so number 4. So my turn, right?
Yep.
All right, so this is when it started to get really interesting. Like those 3 guys were for sure in my top 5. I was going to talk about them. Then like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like I could have gone in so many different directions.
Yep.
But I'm going back to the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with the Bears' biggest free agent signing this year, Tremaine Edmonds.
Yep. Great choice.
They gave him a huge contract. They gave him they signed him to be kind of the face of that defense, and he has to live up to that. Despite not having a lot of talent around him, he kind of has to live up to that contract. And we've seen, big price free agents come to Chicago and not live up to expectations immediately, and the fans get after him. And Tremaine Edmonds is going to have to deal with that even if things are kind of out of his control because there's no pass rush and stuff like that, and no one kind of protected him. But I think he has all the talent in the world. I wouldn't say struggle. It took a while for the light to really click with Tremaine Edmonds in Buffalo, but it looks like it finally did this past season, and he had an absolutely fantastic year. Like I said, he had a lot more talent surrounding him in Buffalo than he's going to have this year on the Bears defense. But the hope is that he can kind of rise above that and still be the type of player he was last year. So it's the middle linebacker position in Chicago. You got some big shoes to fill. This is a position Bears fans know really, really well. Like
it's also
a good play.
We refuse to get anything like at least average or above play at.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So I think that this was kind of a combination of like the pressure that's going to be on him and also the expectations that the Bears front office has and Bears fans have. And, hopefully he lives up to it.
Yeah, not to mention you're coming to a city in Chicago that loves their middle linebackers and a system that loves their linebackers.
Right.
Like the best defensive player in the system for Eberflus for the Colts was Shaq Griffin, and now, mind you, he played the technically an outside backer role. They played nickel a lot, so it was basically 2 inside backers, like kind of a funny little pseudo 3-4. And you could argue maybe TJ Edwards is going to be in that role, but from the way they've talked about it, it's not going to be the exact same scheme, and they do expect Tremaine Edmonds to be like the middle operator of that defense.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah. He absolutely almost made my list because he is going to be it feels like Edmonds and Edwards, just as far as quality of players, are going to be a big part of what makes that engine turn. They're going to need to make plays. They're going to need to be disciplined to let other rotational guys just stay fresh and take chances. So love it. I'm going back to the defensive side as well for my 4th. I'm going back to the defensive back room as well.
Okay.
Number 4, I'm going with Kyler Gordon.
That's okay. That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, so you could argue Eddie Jackson coming back from injury, he's another one of those guys where if he's good, the room's good. If he's bad, the room's bad to some extent, because if he's a weak link, that's trouble. But he's never really been. He's always been reliable in coverage, and I think you'll probably get that from him again, especially with increased play from the DBs around him. And I think you will see, honestly, I think Jaquan Brisker has a chance to step into that, great player role. It's never easy to transition as a safety, and he had those games where he flashed he was explosive around the line, good in coverage, really good instincts, can play the run. He could really move into that similar an Amos role that we saw opposite Eddie Jackson early in his career, and I would expect that to happen. But the player I want to see and I think will be the most important for that unit is Kyler Gordon. being that the people that we've added, Terrell Smith and Tyreek Stevenson, those guys are outside corners. Those guys are bigger guys where they'll be able to look in the backfield and kind of play reactionarily. They also don't have the best agility scores. The best agility scores on the team by far are Kyler Gordon. And Poles and Eberflus in this offseason have both said that they envision him more inside. Even though despite the end of the year, he played a little bit more outside just because of injuries. I don't think that's like a trend that we'll continue to see. He'll be the slot cornerback guy. And the Bears were in their nickel defense almost 80% of the time last year. He's going to be on the field so much. And with the way the modern NFL works, like he's going to be seeing a lot of really good receivers. Tyreek Hills of the world, the Justin Jeffersons of the world, Devontae Adams of the world. Like you have to be able to cover the slot. And Kyler Gordon, he did a little better down the stretch, but he really needs to take a step forward if that unit's not going to be able to get exposed.
Yeah, that's a really good choice. He was 6th for me, so I could have easily put him 4th or 5th. But yeah, for everything you said, the thing like he started to play a little bit better at the end of last year, but still wasn't really he needed to be. Yeah. I think playing slot only is going to be a good thing for him.
Yep.
At the time when they said he was going to kind of do both, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think that's a good idea. But in hindsight, that might have been a little bit too much for a rookie. And we've also seen, cornerback is a position where rookies typically struggle.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the, it's not crazy that he struggled as a rookie. And we've seen second-year cornerbacks kind of take that leap and at least get to average before really taking off in their third year. And I think that's really all he needs to do. He just needs to be an average player this year. But that's so important because as we kind of discussed when we were talking about Jalen Johnson, there's a lot of question marks in our defensive backfield. Tyreek Stevenson, we both like him, but he's a rookie. He might have the same kind of rookie struggles that Kyler Gordon has. And if that's the case, then Kyler Gordon really needs to step up.
Yeah.
Because you can't have two liabilities out there.
Exactly. And you can't expect Tyreek Stevenson to go out and be good enough to hold down his part of the bargain. He needs to be able to be the worst cornerback on the field. And if Kyler Gordon doesn't take a step forward, there's a chance that he's not. That's bad news.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, he needs to have that kind of safety blanket and be like, okay, and he's going to be like the cornerback 2 playing on the outside, but if I'm the third best corner, we're going to be okay because Kyler Gordon's, inside helped me out a little bit. So that's a really good option. I probably should have put him at 5, but I put Jalen Johnson on there, so I wanted to just kind of go with a different position. But that's a great one for sure. All right.
So who's up? Is it round 5? Is it me?
It's you. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of ways this could have gone.
So many ways.
Tremaine Edmonds just missed the list, and I thought all the things that you said was basically the exact reasons why he was almost my 5 guy. He was the big money signing. There was a big difference between the 2 linebackers they signed and the way that they were paid. So you got to imagine that they're viewed differently as well.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this spot could go to Chase Claypool. I honestly thought I could have given it to Brisker or Eddie Jackson, just being that they both could be the variance for both of them is interesting. You could get your really high quality Eddie Jackson, or you could get maybe tailing off Eddie Jackson. And Brisker could it really does feel like he's ready to take a big step, but he could just be susceptible to the same thing that most of these young DBs are. It takes a couple of years to learn the league. But either way, last one going back to the offensive line, Tevin Jenkins. Yeah, I mean, we said the dynamic you're looking at for the line, you need to have at least 2 good players, and then hopefully maybe 2 not bad players. Mm-hmm. And Tevin Jenkins has pretty much looked good everywhere he's had the chance to play, but for some reason it still doesn't look like that he's won any favors from this coaching staff. So I don't know if he'll even be on the roster come September, but if he is starting at left guard, there is just kind of that expectation that he'll be the best offensive lineman we have. And he's flat. He's more than flashed it. He really has shown consistently that he can be a mauler and got good pop in his hands and pass protection. but he needs to continue to show it. He needs to continue to take that step forward, because if we're relying on like Braxton Jones or Cody Whitehair to be our best offensive lineman, now it's a tire fire.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, he's got to be your best. He's got to be the Bears' best offensive lineman, and that's a lot of pressure. So I feel like that's a really good choice for it if we're talking about the top 5 most important Bears, because he has to be your best offensive lineman. If he's your 3rd best offensive lineman, then the Bears are probably in trouble, because Braxton Jones. Obviously we talked about him. We expect him to take a step forward, but I still expect Tevin Jenkins to be a better player. And then, Cody Whitehair, like he's got to be your best offensive lineman this year. Otherwise, the Bears are going to be in trouble.
If he played tackle, honestly, maybe he could have come in at number 1. Mm-hmm. The only reason it was a little bit more easy to pick Braxton Jones is because he probably has the ability to be the player we need him to be, but he hasn't shown it as consistently as Tevin Jenkins, so it really is a question mark with him. But we really do need the most out of Tevin Jenkins. He needs to not only set the tone from a play point stand of view, from a play point of view, but also from an attitude point of view and a tonality point of view, making sure that there's consistency amongst the line. He was one of the only starters that played the whole year last year, and he's one of the only guys in the line right now that really has that vicious side. And you want to make sure guys like Darnell Wright, who showed it in college, or Nate Davis, who might have showed it on another team, can come in and feel confident to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good choice. I mean, the offensive line, we obviously went with Braxton Jones. I thought about putting Tevin Jenkins in my top 5. I also thought about putting Darnell Wright in my top 5. You could probably have made the argument that Cody Whitehair is there, because right at this point he's your starting center. So you can make, and I'm sure you could probably make the argument that Nate Davis is a very important Bear doing. So you could have gone any way on this offensive line. But I think, if we're talking about the most important offensive lineman, it's Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins. Those are kind of the 2 guys you really need to. With Tevin Jenkins, it's not so much like he needs to take another step, because I think he played really, really well last year. Hopefully he does take another step. But he at least needs to play at the exact same level he was last year, maybe just a little bit more consistent, because he did have a couple lapses here and there. But so we're not talking about a huge step he needs to take to be the best offensive lineman of the Bears. It's just be more consistent, play with that tenacity, kind of set the tone for the Bears. And I think he should do that, and I fully expect him to do that. So I think that's a good choice.
Who do we got?
My 5, I stuck on the defensive side of the ball. And so when we thought about this idea, I was thinking okay, so what are the Bears' goals for next year? The Bears' goal, best case scenario is, you need to go from worst to first, win the division, or at least sneak into the wild card into the playoffs.
Yep.
That's the best case scenario. And I think if that is going to happen, then the Bears need to get a pass rush of some kind. And I fully understand what you said about just kind of giving up on the pass rush, because that's probably what I should be doing. But someone on the Bears defensive line has to step up. So I went with the guy who I think has the best chance of doing that, and that's DeMarcus Walker.
Yeah,
they signed him. He's produced at the NFL level as a pass rusher, at least. Most of that's come from the inside, so he's going to be playing more on the edge probably. But I think if the Bears if their defense wants to be successful this year, he's going to have to get 7-8 sacks at least. Maybe even double digits. That's kind of going to be at the expectation. He's never done that in the pros. No. But that's kind of what he needs to do. So I think you could have gone with Rasheem Green. You could have gone with Travis Gibson. I just really definitely wanted to put a pass rusher in here.
In there, you know what I mean?
Dominic Robinson. Yeah, it could be a good one too. Like I said, I thought about putting just edge rusher or pass rusher here, but I didn't want to cop out like that. So I picked an actual guy. But you could import any of those pass rushers into what I'm saying here, and the same thing would apply.
Someone has got to do something.
Someone's got to do something. I think it's going to be DeMarcus Walker, but if it's Rasheem Green or Travis Gibson or Dominic Robinson, fine. I don't care. Someone's got to pressure the quarterback, and that's going to be what the Bears unfortunately probably struggle at defensively this year in that regard.
Yeah, I don't imagine this will be a funny year, probably the first year in a long time where, without a doubt, the offense is going to be better than the defense, and we're going to need it to be not like maybe like the early 2010s, 2012, 2013 in that range when it was Cutler and Forte and Marty
The
Bennett.
defense is kind of on the back end, and
like
and Briggs were old, and
we were like, yeah, we need the offense to
Yeah.
carry us, but we are firmly in a position where it's like we need the offense to carry us. And I'd say the guys that we mentioned in the offense today are like, those are the guys that'll make the difference. Because like you kind of know what you're getting with Justin Fields. I know people are talking about like the mechanics and like how he looks with all these new receivers, but it's like you've seen enough film of him in the NFL and his flashes and in college to know that he can stand in the pocket and throw it. You know that he can run a fun offense with all these running things, and the running back room is probably the best offensive group in like on the team, and which is why when we go and do these things, we end up just talking about offensive line and receivers because those are kind of the big question marks.
Yeah, especially with like running back, we don't have a bell cow running back. It's going to be a 3-headed monster, maybe even 4-headed monster, depending on like Travis Homer or if they still believe in Justin Ebner. So it's hard to put any of those running backs on like a list like this. Because they're all going to be serving a role and playing their part, and they are important. But when you talk about putting up points in the NFL, it's about passing the football. So obviously we're going to talk about wide receivers, and we're going to talk about the left tackle first because that's the blindside protector. It's probably the most important offensive lineman for throwing the football. So it makes sense. A lot of different directions that I could have gone with like this even 3, 4, 5 really. Who were very interchangeable. Like Kyler Gordon just missed mine. Anyone else you kind of had like just miss?
Just missed, yeah. Like I thought about Chase Claypool. I thought about and I thought about the safeties.
Yeah,
I thought about Jaquan Brisker just because I'm really bullish on Jaquan Brisker. If you could buy stock in athletes, I'll be buying some Brisker stock. I think he's going to take a nice little step forward this year.
I think so too. Yeah, that would be a good one. I thought about like Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool.
It's so funny. More than ever, like it feels like we're like the last couple of years, and rightly so. This is how rebuild is done, but just so many new faces and so many new rookies. Like if this is the way of the world with pace, just adding 10 rookies every class. I mean, it's not pace polls, like adding 10 rookies every class and being stingy with young, like explosive people in free agency. Like depth charts are going to be so interesting to monitor for the off seasons to come. For the last couple of years, maybe just because we've had, good veterans in place every time these head coaches have come in and polls like really just cleaned house. It feels like we always kind of had an idea going into the season, like where starters will be. Like it's very rare that it's like, we have like no idea, like legit no idea who our starters at either edge position are going to be come September.
Yeah, for sure. We have no idea.
Like time last year, we were like, okay, we got Riley Reef as a left tackle, and then September rolled around. I was like, Braxton Jones, Southern
Utah? That's true. Yeah. I mean, like we think Demarcus Walker is going to be like the starting edge, but maybe they do see him as a D tackle.
Yeah,
we don't know, so we'll see.
Yeah. Maybe we end up with Jadeveon Clowney ends up with 12 sacks for the Bears next year.
Who knows? That'd be nice.
Yeah, he would have been the guy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the number 5 should be whichever defensive end the Bears sign or trade for. That's maybe the most important Bear this year.
Yeah, it really does feel like the Bears and the edge market is one of those things where it's like where there's a lot of smoke, there's fire. There's been a lot of talk just about Bears being, kicking tires and talking to people and making calls. So
yeah,
it really does feel like with the cap space we have left, there are some extensions to be done, which we should probably talk about. There's a cool dynamics to be talked about: Mooney, Kmet, Jalen Johnson, and Claypool. But after that, like there's still money to be spent on free agents, and it really looks like the Bears will be monitoring the trade or the cut market for an edge.
I mean, it's super weird because like as tight-lipped as this front office has been in the the last 2 years, like both polls and Eberflus, when asked about that, you're like, yeah, we're probably going to acquire it. Like we're going to be monitoring the trades. We have money to spend. Like it's weird that they have not been just giving the political answer, like, oh, we like the guys we have, blah blah blah. Like they've been open about upgrading that position. So
You
I
almost
fully
wonder
expect it to
if
happen
them
eventually.
trying to like get people to call them and say, "Hey, you looking for an edge?" And they go,
Yeah.
"Who says?" You said.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
you literally said that in the interview like yesterday. Yeah.
Instead of them
So
calling
yeah, that's
all 32 teams and asking about the players, maybe they'll have someone call them
yeah.
and say, "Yeah, we're trying to offload an edge."
Yeah, I mean, so they, like you said, they have the money. That I fully expect. It might not be like one of the big names, and might not be a Jadeveon Clowney, but I fully expect them to sign someone, bring someone in, or trade for a guy who's maybe under the radar, who's not going to be a superstar, but can help out the pass rush a little bit. But I do think the extension talks are very interesting. Like you said, like Komet's I would guess Komet's probably going to extended sometime here soon. By all accounts, they really like him, and he played well last year, so it makes sense to kind of
like the only
get ahead of the market there. Yeah, but yeah, so he seems like a sure thing. But then yeah, there's Mooney, Jalen Johnson, Claypool. I feel like with Mooney, it's going to be difficult. Him coming off that serious ankle injury, like, are you going to give a big contract to a guy you haven't really seen run yet? Like, I don't think so.
And it's like, are you going to give a contract to a guy and not the other guy, or are you going to give only?
Right.
Are you going to give two? With Claypool, there's no way he gets the deal done. Claypool is a full
I don't think you
right
can
now, and to some extent, you could even argue if he plays good and earned himself a big contract, you can let him go and get himself his money and just take him for the comp pick. So there's he would be an easier one to let go. I mean, I guess Darnell Mooney would probably be able to do the same, but it feels like Darnell Mooney is one that could still get done before the season started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I just don't know if they. I mean, I feel like they want to. They've said all the right things in regards to Mooney. They clearly like Darnell Mooney.
Oh yeah.
Justin Fields clearly likes Darnell Mooney too, which I think will definitely play into their their talks. Their decision making. They said they talked to Justin Fields draft time about who to draft, but like maybe some wide receivers he might like. Yeah. They did that same thing with Velus Jones 2 years ago, so they clearly value his input. So if they go to him and be like, "Hey, we're thinking of re-signing this one of these wide receivers, who should we like? Which one do you want?" Like basically, like that will play into it. But at the same time, like he's coming off a pretty serious injury. Like you got to see kind of how he holds up in the Eastern. Like
serious. Like only recently have I heard that he's like still kind of rehabbing. I kind of thought him missing the last games of the season. I was like, oh, we're throwing the towel in anyway. I know what you're doing, Darnell. But now it's still like they're just saying he's rehabbing at the facility. Is like, oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think he's running just yet. Like, I don't think you can give that guy a contract, even if they want to. But I think you kind of you give it to training camp, and I'm sure he'll be fine. So then maybe that could be like a right before week 1 extension, something like that. We've seen kind of in the past. So a lot of different avenues to spend their money.
That'll be interesting one. That'll be kind of the thing I would imagine that would make any news in Bears news until like we get to training camp. I mean, like real training camp. This is like we're doing OTAs right now, which is actually a lot of fun. It's a bit of a tease. You get to see the boys going through the motions and everybody wearing their jerseys for the first time. But it'll be nice when we start to let ourselves get crazy about. It's funny, like we're like, OTAs is whatever. You guys are getting excited about videos, and then they go and they're doing like inter scrimmage practices, and we're like, did you hear that Justin Fields threw 4 touchdown passes in Israel yesterday? And we're treating it like it's so much of a big deal, but it is just nice to start to get an idea of the people who have been to like training camps before and like have historical context. Be like, yeah, things are moving really good right now. It's like when like the people that are really in on the beat at training camp will be like, okay, like there's like good things brewing here. Then maybe like or like expectations are higher than maybe we thought they were going to be. Then that's when you start to really be allowed to get excited for like good cause. Until then, it's just YouTube videos. It feels like.
Which obviously you can't take any stock into, but it is kind of cool to see Justin Fields throwing to DJ Moore against air, no one covering him. Like, wow, that was a fucking dime. That's so good. It'll be so good this year. And then like if a report comes out and says like, oh, Justin Fields threw an interception and 7-on-7, like, well, it's still early.
Yeah,
you can't take anything away from those.
I want him throwing that throw in practice.
Right? Yeah. You learn more from your mistakes than your. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's just fine. I mean, like you said, it's a teaser. Like
Yeah.
there's not going to be a whole lot going on. We're going to be doing the weekly podcast, and we're going to have to come up with ideas like this to rank the players because there's not a whole lot going on right now. There won't really be till training camp, but hey, it's still fun to talk about the Bears.
It's good
Doesn't
context, you know. Some of the people,
Yeah.
it just gives them an idea of the players that they should be looking at in the year. You know, if they're just becoming new fans and don't really understand the dynamic of where the roster was or where the team is, you know, kind of gives you some insight into the players that'll be the make or break players, you could say, for the team this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to be fair, like we said, Justin Fields is obviously one. And like I left out some players like a Tremaine Edmonds and like a DJ Moore just because I'm expecting them to be good. Like those are the make or break players as well. But it's just got to do with how much their like play, I guess, would make a difference. I guess, man, if DJ Moore is bad, but see, even then, so let's just live in a world where DJ Moore has a bad year. If we were going into the season with Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, it wouldn't be so hard for us to say that really isn't so terrible because we were convincing ourselves Darnell Mooney was wide receiver 1 last year, and you could at least argue that Chase Claypool could be a wide receiver 2. You know, he was whatever. He was 10.00 RAS when he came out or whatever it was. Like, I refuse to give up on him kind of thing. But, man, adding DJ Moore to that group is like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, like in this fantasy world where DJ Moore isn't good, like I don't like. I mean, like you even said, I don't think that's gonna happen. But like, let's just pretend like DJ Moore isn't who we think he is. Like, yeah, you still have 3 pretty good wide receivers. So like, it doesn't completely tank your wide receiver room if DJ Moore isn't kind of who he's built and who we think he's going to be.
Yeah.
But it does kind of tank, I guess, the expectations a little bit for the offense. Like you're not going to win any games then, like because your offense really needs to carry you. And if
like,
you have 3 number 2s, it's going to be
exactly. Yeah. The offense can be great if DJ Moore's a 1, but if we have a couple of 2s, then maybe it won't be as good. But that wide receiver room, man, it's hard to overstate how much Poles improved that room since this time last year, especially considering how hard like it looked like the path forward to doing so would be. Like, didn't look like Claypool or Moore would be available. Traded for both of them, and instead of Velus Jones, like we said, he was starting at the end of the year. Now behind Tyler Scott, he's your 5th receiver. That's not so bad. He'll be a difference maker on special teams. If you can mix in 2 or 3 touches for him a game, like that's a really dangerous offense.
Yeah, I mean, and I know people like, or myself included, have been really hard on Equanimeous St. Brown and Dante Pettis, but them being your 4th and 5th wide receiver or 5th and 6th wide receiver is absolutely fine. Like they have good special teams value and they can get open, in spurts. They can play a little bit at least. But when last year when they're your 1 and 2 wide receiver, then you have issues. But 4, 5, and 6, like the bottom of the roster wide receivers, kind of fill out your roster room. I think you can actually do a lot worse than those wide receivers. In that role. And then you got Tyler Scott, like you said, who maybe has some upside. We don't know. Well, hopefully he does. Velus Jones do upside play. And then, behind that, you don't really have much, but you don't really need, more than that. So, yeah, it's crazy how going into this season, it's so different than what it was last year. We're not hyping up Equanimeous St. Brown because he knows the scheme. Like, we're hyping up DJ Moore because he's actually good.
No, there's some studs in that room. It's really exciting. Yeah. On top of the fact that, the guys that we were hoping that can supplement that role should be also learning the offense better. Claypool was getting some pretty high praise from Justin Fields about not only coming to practice and to like training camp or whatever, a little bit more mature, but he also seemed to maybe insinuate that Claypool wasn't the happiest about, Moore coming in and being the automatic starter, and that now maybe he's kind of changed his position and is ready to just contribute to the team the way that he can. And I think that's a pretty healthy mindset for a player that has all the talent in the world, but like is going into a season where he's going to try and get himself paid next offseason.
100%. Yeah. It'll be fun. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Should be good. Anything fun going on this week? They're still at OTAs. I think we get that for 7 or 8 more days. As long as we, it's almost like no news is good news during this period. It'll be good to see the video.
Right.
As long as we don't hear about any locker room fights or people getting injured, it'll be good to just get to training camp.
Yeah, like I saw a tweet from like the Lions account saying like they had like 2 guys, David Montgomery and like one of their linebackers got injured. And I'm like, man, that sucks. Like, thank God, like I haven't seen any of that stuff. So that's all I'm hoping for. It. Learn the playbook, get DJ Moore and Jeff Fields on the same page, and
go enjoy
some
time off in June.
Yeah, it'll be fine. All right.
Anything else? I think that'll do it.
I think we're good. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. Follow us on Twitter. I'll be tweeting out the link probably tomorrow, Friday morning. So make sure to retweet that as well. Thanks everyone, and we'll talk to everyone next week. Bear down.
Bear down.